page in your notes packet. What I did was type out the directions. However, you are probably going to have to make some adjustments on this page because the directions match the old calculators and you have the newer calculators. Like, so they match the 83s and you have an 84. So there's a couple small differences. So we're just going to have to make a little bit of adjustments or edits on this page as we work through it. So what we're going to do is I just want you to hit the clear button on this page. I want you to go to second and I want you to hit the plus sign. And we're going to go down to option 4, which is clear all lists. So for those of you in like other classes and this and that, it's going to clear out any data you have saved. Well, you're going to be typing on it today in class, so. And then go to your y equals and just clear out anything in your y equals as well. So what that does is put us all on the same equal playing field. Some of us have our catalog and R value on. Some of us will not. So what we're going to do is hit second. And you're going to go down to button 0. And then you're going to hit alpha and the letter D, which is like this key right here. And what that's going to do is that's going to take you to the letters D in the catalog. And then try hitting alpha D again. Maybe you didn't press it all the way. And you want to go down to diagnostic. And when the arrow press is facing diagnostic on, I want you guys to hit enter. And then you're going to hit enter one more time so that it says done. So everybody's home screen should say diagnostic on and done. So it's second, 0 to catalog. If you don't know how to get the alpha D to work, you can scroll all the way to alphabet letter D, but that's going to take a while. So you just hit that alpha D key, and that'll take you to alphabet letter D. Sometimes you have to press the D twice. It takes a minute. Go to diagnostic, on, hit enter, and it should say done. Anybody not able to get their diagnostics on? Wonderful. Let's look at the first example then in our notes. So, as part of the warm-up, it says, look at the formal definition of the word scatter. Take a minute and think about this definition. How can the definition of scatter help you to remember the difference between a scatter plot and a linear equation? So here's my definition of scatter. Scatter, by definition, is to throw loosely about, distribute at irregular intervals, to separate and drive off in various directions. So if you think about a scatter plot in a linear equation will always be a straight line like this. A scatter plot is those random points along there. So if you think about the word scatter, it's a random plotting of points So is a scatter plot. So today we're going to focus on the calculators, and if you use a calculator to get your line of best fit, it is called a regression line. So when you find the line by hand, it's called a trend line or a line of best fit. If I want you to find it on the calculator, we will call it a linear regression or a regression line. A correlation coefficient labeled R is a unit of measure that shows how well data is modeled to form a linear equation. As we discussed yesterday, its range is -1 to 1, where if an R value is -1, it has a strong negative correlation. If it is 0, there is no correlation. And if it is +1, it will have a positive strong correlation. So values that are considered strong positives are going to be like 0.9 to 1 or -0.9 to -1. Am I still copying down my definitions? Are we good? All right then. So what we're going to do is look at example number 1 now in your notes. So it says the table below shows the median income of U.S. families from 1970 to 2002. Use a graphing calculator to make a scatter plot of the data. So what we're going to do is use our calculator to input this data. So you're going to hit the word stat right here. And then you are going to go to edit. And what you should see on your screen is L1, L2, L3, L4, or 5. If you do not have an L1 or an L2, please let me know. And then what we're going to do is L1 is like my domain, L2 is the range. So we're going to input our data into L1 and L2. So I'm going to make year L1 and income L2. So we're just going to start typing in those data points. After you finish L1, you'll arrow over and input L2. Stat, edit. So stats like under the delete key, and then you hit enter on edit. Your data should match. So you should never have a point in L1 that doesn't have a point that matches it in L2. So everything should have a matching point. Always check to make sure you typed everything incorrectly. So this is why domain and range is such an important aspect to what we've been doing previously. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to y equals, and for those of us not in stats, we need to turn on our plot. So you're just going to arrow up so that plot is highlighted and hit enter. And if you arrow back down, your plot should now be darkened. We're going to then hit the word window, and we're going to adjust our domain and range to match my data. So my domain goes from 1970 to 2002. So I'm going to make my window 1950 to 2020 and change my scale to be by 5. For my Y's, it starts at 9,867 and goes to 51,000. So I can go from 0 to 90,000, but so that I don't have a billion little tick marks, I'm going to change my Y scale to 10,000. And then hit graph. So all of our graphs should look like this. So this is like a scatter plot you would have drawn by hand last night on graph paper. So what we're going to do now is get a prediction equation for it. So you're going to go back to stat. We're going to arrow over to calc and go down to option 4, which is linear regression, and hit enter. My X should be L1, my Y should be L2. And then if you go, this sort of said your guided notes sort of match it. If you want to store the equation in Y1 so it graphs it on my graph, you're going to hit the word vars right here. Go over to Y, hit enter on function, and enter on Y1. So what that will do is store the linear regression equation in my Y equals. So the last thing you have to do is hit enter on calculate. A represents slope, B represents the y-intercept, and the bottom R represents our correlation coefficient. So the equation of my line is y equals 1,349. We always do 3 decimals. So 867 x minus 2,650,768.344. If it asks you to describe, this is a strong positive because my R is 0.996. And then it says use the equation to predict the median income in 2015. So that's my X. So you could say Y equals 1349.867. Type 2015 in for X minus 2,650,768.344. But what I'm going to show you is that since we put this in our Y equals, so if you go to Y equals, that equation is there. If you hit the word graph, my line is now on my graph. If I wanted to know that predicted value, you can hit second, trace, and if you hit option number 1 for value, you can type in any X value you want. So I would type in 2015, and it's going to plug 2015 into that equation and give me my answer. So what that means is that in 2015, my table of values predicts that the median family income will be $69,213.93. Yes. Go to hit Y equals. Is your plot 1 darkened? Go up to plot, hit second Y equals, and you can change your plot settings. Okay. Make it match this. Change it to L1 and L2. All right. We have 4 minutes. So again, we probably don't have time to get through all of this. That doesn't mean you can't do your homework. It just means we can't do both examples. Does anybody have any questions on how to type in the data or anything on the calculator? Do you just want to watch me do it kind of one more time, even though you've seen all of the same data? So, blank, yes. 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 The only thing that's slightly different is if you get down to the stat in the calc screen after step number 4, this screen here doesn't perfectly match those directions because it says you can just hit enter. So like right here, it says and press enter. On the new calculators, you have to go down and press enter at calculate. Like you have to arrow down and then press enter. Does that make sense? So that's the only thing that doesn't perfectly match on here. So hit stat, enter on edit. If you want to clear your list, you go to second plus option 4 and hit enter. I'm not going to do it because then I will have no data. You'll have data in L1 and L2. To get the linear equation, you're going to hit stat, go to calc, go to option 4. If you want to store it in your Y equals, you hit vars, Y vars, function Y1, arrow to calculate, hit enter. A is slope, B is y-intercept, R is your correlation coefficient. If you hit window, you can change your domain and range to match your table. You can also hit zoom, and option number 9 is stat. Zoom stat will also help fit your data in the window. So zoom 9 will also, so you can see like my window is slightly shrunk. The downside to zoom stat is when I wanted to predict 2015, because my X max is 2005, if I hit that second value and I type in 2015, it does not work because my graph does not include that data point. So you would have to go to your window and change that so that it goes to the point you're predicting. Does everybody understand that? Because that's a very important thing. If I want to predict it, but zoom 9 doesn't include it on my window, then I have to change that. So if I change it to 2025, it's now included and I can do my trace. Your homework is that next page in your packet. It's those 4 problems on the calculator. I am in here tomorrow for QRT in case you need to